This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Thursday, February 11th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of coronavirus, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. The Democratic Republic of Congo is confirming 2 Ebola cases on Thursday in a resurgence of an outbreak. 2 people have contracted Ebola and died this week in DRC's North Kivu province, according to a statement by the World Health Organization and the country's health ministry. A 60-year-old woman who died Wednesday in the Biena district had a link with a woman who also died after contracting Ebola and was married to a survivor of the previous major outbreak, according to a statement. Congo's health ministry has deployed a team to the area and is tracing more than 100 contacts of the 2 women in the health zones of Biena and Katwa. Ebola swept through eastern Congo from 2018 to 2020 in an outbreak that killed more than 2,200 people before it was declared over. Last June, the WHO says it's not unusual for sporadic cases to occur following a major outbreak. The first COVID-19 shots are one step closer for low and middle income countries that have been left out of vaccine delivery as wealthier countries snapped up available supplies. Africa 54 managing editor Vincent McCory has more.
The World Health Organization's scientific advisors are recommending authorizing a vaccine developed by the University of Oxford and drug maker AstraZeneca, according to Reuters. COVAX, a WHO co-led organization aimed at distributing shots equitably worldwide, is set to deliver 336 million doses of this vaccine to 145 countries once the organization gives the green light. The OK is expected following meetings on February 12th and 15th. However, new data about the vaccine are complicating the rollout. In South Africa, where a new, more contagious variant is prevalent, a study found that patients who got the AstraZeneca shot remained susceptible to mild or moderate cases of COVID-19. Scientists still expect the vaccine keeps people out of the hospital and out of the grave, which they note is the most important reason to get inoculated. But the results led the South African Health Ministry to scale back its own rollout of AstraZeneca vaccine while it collects more data. Meanwhile, the WHO's Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on Immunization on Wednesday recommended going ahead with a shot. Vincent McCory, VOA News.
The European Union Commission's president defended the bloc's coronavirus vaccination strategy Wednesday amid growing criticism of delays in procurement and delivery. As Henry Ridgwell reports from London, the EU is facing crisis on multiple fronts.
105-year-old Elisabeth Stuyvesant on her way to be vaccinated in her home city of Cologne, Germany, Monday.
It's a very, very good thing, and I wish, even though I'm old, that many, many people will do it.
Many Europeans want the vaccine, but the bloc is battling a supply shortage. The slow start is causing political pain for the EU. By the first week of February, the EU had given first vaccine doses to just under 4% of its population, compared to 11% in the US and 17% in Britain.
You can say the Commission handled the contract negotiations with these companies badly compared to the UK and compared to the US. But when it comes to approval, that was a conscious decision. They knew it was going to be slower, and they knew that that would then have a knock-on impact on rollout. There have also been additional problems well publicised to do with the delivery of vaccines by different companies.
Brussels has imposed export controls to ensure that drug companies manufacturing vaccines in Europe fulfil contracts with the EU before sending them overseas. Speaking to EU lawmakers Wednesday, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen admitted mistakes had been made.
Wir waren spät dran bei der Zulassung.
We were late to authorize. We were too optimistic when it came to massive production, and perhaps we were too confident that what we ordered would actually be delivered on time.
But von der Leyen defended the EU strategy.
Es war richtig und es ist richtig.
It was the right thing to do that we as Europeans collectively ordered the vaccine. I cannot even imagine if big players, big member states had rushed in and everybody else had been left empty-handed. What would that have meant for our European market and the unity of Europe?
For smaller EU member states, the joint procurement has worked, says Bevington.
And if you had had a kind of dog-eat-dog approach to vaccines, you would have had some member states with lots of vaccines and other member states with none. It would have generated lots of conflict within the European Union.
Conflict may have been averted, but criticism of the EU Commission is getting louder. The EU's threat to block vaccine exports to Northern Ireland, quickly rescinded, prompted criticism from London and Dublin. Meanwhile, in another crisis, the bloc's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, has come under fire over his Moscow trip this past weekend, taken against the advice of many EU officials. Russia expelled 3 European diplomats just as Borrell and his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, began a press conference, an action widely seen as an attempt to humiliate the EU for its support for jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Borrell received stinging criticism as he faced European lawmakers this week.
You decided to go there and was led to a trap carefully prepared by Sergei Lavrov.
Analysts say these controversies within the EU will likely die down if Europe's vaccination programme continues to gather speed. But any further delays could cause lasting damage to the bloc in the eyes of its people. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
The United Nations says 20 of its peacekeepers were wounded in an attack on their base on Wednesday morning. Neka Chile reports.
20 United Nations peacekeepers were wounded, some of them seriously, when their base in central Mali came under fire on Wednesday, according to the UN. A spokesman for MINUSMA, the multidimensional integrated stabilization mission in Mali, said the attack took place near the town of Dunswa at around 7 in the morning. He did not say who was responsible, though Islamic militant groups linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State regularly attack peacekeepers and Malian soldiers in the area. Deployed since 2013, the UN currently has more than 14,000 peacekeepers in Mali.
Neka Chile of Reuters filed that report. A survey by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers shows that women are dominating the East African country's top mechanized jobs, although men still own most businesses and have better paying jobs. Victoria Amunga reports from Nairobi on one businesswoman who started her own natural foods packaging company.
Esther Githui-Ewart's natural foods packaging farm has grown by leaps and bounds since she started it 5 years ago. She and other women are leaders in Kenyan manufacturing, but Githui-Ewart says it still can be difficult to deal with men in the industry.
Like, for example, you want to supply your honey to a big company, and the procurement manager might be a man who might want more from you than you're willing to give. You just want to do clean business, but once a man is the procurement manager, that proves to be an obstacle because they'll want much more.
Despite Kenyan men having most and better paid manufacturing jobs, Kenyan women are dominating the sector's top careers. A September Kenya's Association of Manufacturers survey says even male owners seem to prefer having women run their factories, with 89% of their senior managers being women.
What this demonstrates is that when you have also boards or leaders who support the growth of women within the manufacturing sector, you tend to see policies put in place that mainstream gender into the boardroom, and what this leads to is that more women are able to rise to top leadership positions.
But women owners like Githui-Ewart are still a minority, with men owning 73% of Kenya's factories. The center that ran the survey says most women factory owners have only appeared in the last decade.
Why they're going into it? Because they're seeing it's a lucrative sector. It's a sector that has opportunities. But we have to understand that even though we're having more women go into manufacturing, right, most of their jobs and most of their businesses are actually informal.
Mugenyi says those companies that do have more women attract and retain talent and are better able to gauge consumer interest and demand. To help level the playing field, Kenyan authorities say they're helping to fund women manufacturers.
We have various programs and projects to support women in manufacturers. First, we have the Women Enterprise Fund, which is available. We are giving loans. We have partnered with our other institutions, for instance, Micro and Small Enterprise Authority. We are giving funds to women.
That gives Kenya's women manufacturing leaders more hope for a just future in the industry. Victoria Amunga for VOA News, Nairobi.
For one South African winemaker, the COVID lockdown could have been a disaster, but a bitter trade war between China and Australia has thrown the 325-year-old estate a lifeline. Emma McCarthy explains.
Lockdown restrictions could have been a disaster for South African wine estate Verknok. Measures such as a ban on alcohol sales destroyed its domestic market. But the 325-year-old estate was thrown a lifeline by an increasingly bitter row between two countries thousands of miles away. Long-simmering tensions between Australia and China boiled over after Canberra led international calls for an inquiry into the origins of the global health crisis in Wuhan. Beijing retaliated in November, slapping a 212% tariff on Australian wines. Before then, Chinese drinkers bought nearly 40% of Australia's exported wine. But with trade brought to an abrupt halt, companies like Verknok were given an opportunity.
We wouldn't be where we are today without this China deal.
Sean McVeigh is marketing director at the estate, which has recently won a new Chinese contract.
Just being able to get rid of not only the stock that we currently sit with in our cellar, but with the agreement in place that the volume increases every year. It's just given us a bit of that financial assurity for the next 5 to 7 years. We should be in a good space.
Exports of South African wine to China have jumped 50% over the past 3 months, according to the trade body Wines of South Africa. At the Cheers wine shop in Beijing, owner Lin Lulu welcomes the change.
Now the South African wine has great advantages to the Australian wine because of the new tariff situation. I think the South African wine has great potential to surpass the Australian ones.
And it's not just booze and not just South Africa. The trade dispute also gives opportunities to countries across the continent to boost exports of everything from bauxite to beef. Analysts do warn, however, that the Chinese market presents a range of obstacles, including language barriers and opaque bureaucracy. But for now, at least, Australia's loss is a reason for South Africa's vintners to raise a glass.
Emma McCarthy of Reuters filed that report. American University professor Stephen Wilson has worked in Asia, South America, Europe, and Africa. He is currently the dean of 2 colleges, Human Sciences and College of Education, Health, and Aviation at Oklahoma State University. But he says his heart is in Africa. I spoke to Professor Wilson and began by asking him on what his academic engagement is focused.
One is adolescent social competence, and I'm fascinated by cultures around the world and how adolescents move to early adulthood, global families generally, and then Kenyan families specifically.
Is that the only country outside of the U.S. that you've been to and engaged in education?
I have done some work, not as much as in Kenya, but I have done some work in Ethiopia, more recently in Ghana, and then off the continent, I've worked in China and Mexico and Scotland.
Prior to the interview, Professor, you hinted that you are a Peace Corps. Is that where your journey began in Africa?
It is, and it was a long time ago. As I say, the earth was cooling, At that time, there were no computers, there were no cell phones. And so when I had a Peace Corps assignment in Kenya, the first thing I had to do was go to the library and find out where it was. I really didn't know very much. The first year, I was a teacher of all kinds of different subjects at the high school at Gede. The second year, I continued as a teacher, but I became the head teacher, the principal. In those days, it was called the headmaster. And in 2000, 2001, I came to Kenyatta University. So that was the beginning of my more direct relationship with Kenyatta University. Then when I became dean at Oklahoma State University, we also signed a memorandum of understanding. We've taken 3 groups of U.S. students to Kenya, to Kenyatta University, and it was very important to me that they were in classes with KU students, which they were being taught by KU faculty.
So fast forward to 2020 and now 2021, have you been able to maintain that collaboration during the COVID-19 pandemic?
The relationship continues, and a lot of that is around the same kinds of mechanisms that we used in those early years, email and video conferencing and so forth.
Professor Wilson, given that this pandemic is a global challenge, what is working and not working at the university where you are?
A lot of it is as simple as masks and the hand sanitizer, washing our hands. But the primary things that we have done that have been most helpful have been the social distancing. We are using both real-time synchronous as well as recordings. A number of classes are doing things like hybrid, so maybe a third of the class comes Monday, and then they do the video Wednesday and Friday.
What's missing for students right now, and how can that be addressed?
Adolescence and early adulthood is a time in people's lives when they're looking for a life partner, when they're trying to establish their adult identity personally and professionally. The part that we often don't talk about as deans and department heads is what happens when they go out of the classroom. I think there are many things we can do about the classroom and about the ways we impart information. It's very hard to do that online.
What does the future look like for this collaboration between the U.S. universities and Africa?
Every university in the world today says we want to graduate global citizens who have an appreciation for diversity. Well, what could be better than getting our faculty and students together? If they can't be together physically, can they be together in these other ways? We've learned that they can. By 2035, the largest continent in terms of human population, the largest continent in the world will be Africa. 70% of Africans will be under the age of 30. They're very young. And because they're very young, it means that more than half of the traditional age workers in the world, everywhere, will live in Africa. And that today, good or bad, that today means higher education is necessary.
What next for you, Professor?
We want Africans to produce the bridges and roads and medical systems, not simply outsiders coming in to do that. That is not sustainable in the long run. So, yes, I would like to see, for example, the U.S. Embassy be much more focused on higher education, whether it is directly supporting Kenyan universities or whether it is supporting initiatives across Kenyan and American universities. And yes, I'll say it, I would love to be the next ambassador from the United States to Kenya. And if I can be useful to my country, I want to see the United States return to some meaningful, appropriate, positive image in the world. And right now, it feels a little tarnished.
Professor Stephen Wilson is Dean of the College of Human Sciences at Oklahoma State University. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Day 2 of former President Donald Trump's impeachment trial in the U.S. Senate. We'll be right back.
We're bringing women's voices to the conversation, and more than that, we're building a community of inclusion and empowerment.
Here in Kinshasa, campaigns to raise awareness against the spread of coronavirus are common, but getting that information to people who have no access to water, electricity, or money can be a challenge.
We are here at Kalerwe Market in Uganda, Kampala, where in this whole market, women are crying out for their situations to change.
For women, it will be better for us.
I think a big thing for me is just being able to say that when these protests are happening, does it turn around into policy?
Our kids are raped every single day.
This movement got the governments to listen. It really was powerful because it showed what is possible when men and women band together and say, enough is enough.
It's not necessary anymore to climb on a car. I can be in any place to cheer with the people.
Welcome back to Africa 54. House impeachment managers Wednesday showed never-before-seen footage from the January 6th riot of Trump supporters at the U.S. Capitol. The video capped the first day of Democrats' opening argument that former President Donald Trump was directly responsible for the attempt to overturn the counting of Electoral College votes for Joe Biden. VOA's congressional correspondent, Katherine Gibson, has more.
The vice president and U.S. senators just steps away from likely attack. Police beaten by rioters. Scenes that paint a fuller picture of the violent threat inside the U.S. Capitol during the January 6th riot, revealed in previously unreleased security footage shown by House impeachment managers on the opening day of their argument that former President Donald Trump was directly responsible for that riot.
We will prove that the impeached president was no innocent bystander, whose conduct was totally appropriate and should be a standard for future presidents, but that he incited this attack and he saw it coming.
Impeachment managers arguing Trump stopped the Steele rally ahead of the riot was not an isolated event, but the culmination of months of election fraud allegations and incitement of supporters to attack the electoral process.
This was never about one speech. He built this mob over many months with repeated messaging until they believed that they had been robbed of their vote and they would do anything to stop the certification.
Trump's electoral challenge failed in U.S. courts in the weeks before the riot, noted the House impeachment managers.
Not a single court, not a single judge agreed that the election results were invalid or should be invalidated.
They laid out evidence they said shows the former president turned to his supporters to stop the democratic process certifying Joe Biden the winner.
Make no mistake, the violence was not just foreseeable to President Trump. The violence was what he deliberately encouraged.
Trump's lawyers present their defense on Friday. They argue Trump was exercising his right to free speech and cannot be held responsible for the chaos. Although critics say Trump's lawyers have struggled to make their case, it is unlikely Trump will be convicted. 17 Republican senators would have to join Democrats in finding him guilty.
They're beholden to the former president himself. They see that their own political fortunes depend on Trump voters coming out and voting for them in their own Senate races, particularly in Republican states. And so no matter what evidence House managers are going to present at the trial, a significant number of Republicans will ignore them and still vote to acquit the president.
At stake is Trump's ability to run for federal office again. House managers have 8 more hours to present their case on Thursday. Katherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
Ailey is a documentary about the life and creative spirit of iconic African-American dancer, director, and choreographer Alvin Ailey. VOA's Penelope Pulu spoke with the filmmaker about how Ailey's modern dance reflected the Black cultural experience.
Spirituals, gospels, and blues informed Alvin Ailey's dance movements. Ailey was raised in poverty, by a single mother in segregated Texas. His upbringing informed his choreography, a blend of modern dance and ballet, speaking to the Black experience. Using archival footage, filmmaker Jamila Wignot explores the influences behind Ailey's creative genius in her documentary, Ailey.
I really wanted to come at it in the way that Mr. Ailey came at it, and that was about, let's acknowledge that there is pain and struggle in this story, but let's also look at what are the essential things that keep us going, and where are the strengths, and what is true to the everyday experiences of being in this particular community.
Identity was a strong message. Being able to say through the choreography, I am, was a very, very important theme that ran through the dances.
Wignot explains how Elvin Ailey's dance creation, entitled Revelations, expressed the communal joy Black people felt through dancing the night away and worshiping at church the morning after.
He wanted for every kind of audience to be able to come to a theater and experience a human story in the bodies of these people. And I think that's when Mr. Ailey talks about his work being universal.
His dance, entitled Cry, was dedicated to his mother and to motherhood at large.
The Black women who would encourage you, who would be there always, who were so supportive, that you could not fail.
What he's really trying to access and draw upon are these kind of women who have been the strength of a community, and certainly in his own life being raised by a single mother for the vast majority of his youth.
Wignot hopes the documentary offers insight into Ailey's inner psyche as a prolific choreographer of 72 dance works, as an aloof individual, and as a gay African-American who did not allow himself into permanent relationships.
He has this kind of heroic quality to him, as well as these real human struggles.
Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.